Welcome to the Office of the Comptroller, Employee Staff Cybersecurity Awareness Training. Cybersecurity made simple with PVR. Our goal is to achieve better cybersecurity results in the Commonwealth by making cybersecurity simple and providing simple action steps. So when we're making it simple, what are we thinking about? What is it? Cybersecurity simply equals protection. What are you protecting? Data and systems. How are you protecting it? With internal controls. So when you're thinking about cybersecurity, cybersecurity really is a set of internal controls to protect data and systems from fraud, waste, and abuse. And fraud, waste, and abuse can come in many forms. Theft of data or funds, such as misdirected payroll or vendor payments, unauthorized access, network and system disruption and damage, and the cost and damages to make repairs in an incident. Why does it matter to me? Cybercrime really has exploded in the government arena. Cyber criminals, they're highly organized, and they really are trying to steal data and funds and shut down our systems. Our data and systems are considered high-value assets, making us a prime target. So criminals are really targeting you to trick you into helping them steal data and money, or to lock down your networks. So what are the two major cybersecurity risks for you at work? The first one is being tricked into clicking on malicious links, prompts, infected attachments, audio files, or giving away your credentials, which is your login and password. And what this can do is lock up your files and your system networks. The second one is being tricked into processing a transaction based on a fraudulent request. And this could be misdirecting funds for payments to employees or to vendors. And this will result in a loss of funds for the departments, and the payees don't get their money immediately. And everyone thinks, well, I'm not a cybersecurity expert. And that's absolutely true. In reality, most of us are not. But cybersecurity is not just an IT issue. Everyone at every level in any role in your agency has a responsibility to be part of protection data and systems. So what does it mean to you? So we're going to be giving you simple internal controls to protect yourself at work and at home and your department data and systems. So when you think of cybersecurity, your organization is really divided into three different spheres: your leadership, technology systems, and employees. And in the middle is governance. And what does governance mean? It really is your internal controls, your internal control plan. And what that is your legal and fiscal compliance and your budget. It all comes into your internal control plan, which talks about your mission, your operational procedures, and your data management. And as part of governance, you have an internal control plan. That's the official documentation by leadership. And it also includes compliance requirements, and that's going to include the security standards and privacy laws for data and systems. So why does it matter? Internal controls for the Commonwealth are the basis for audits. And the first place auditors are going to look are the internal control plan. And audits require proof that the expenditures of your department and your operation meet compliance rules, like security of data and systems. So one example of internal controls are the information security standards that have been set up by EOTS. They're mandatory for executive departments and also for non-executive departments unless they've adopted a stricter standard. So your department includes these standards as part of your internal controls, and you're going to be given day-to-day operational steps to meet these controls. And some examples are multi-factor authentication, long passwords, VPN, and the security roles. So in the leadership part, leaders are really focused on setting up the governance model and tone from the top. So your department head is going to figure out how to do the operations and the mission and goals of the department within the compliance rules and available funding. And that's going to be the governance model and the controls that are going to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse of Commonwealth resources. And part of that is assigning staff in the organization to ensure that they're going to comply with internal controls. And the term tone from the top is really the leadership directive that all employees are going to perform their job in accordance with the internal control plan. The technology role is pretty self-explanatory. They manage equipment, networks, and systems. And they're going to provide you with guidance. They're going to tell you how you can use your equipment, networks, and security. They're going to provide you with access to your computers and your laptops, VPN, and your systems based on your specific role and what your responsibilities are. Now, your system access and your roles may be limited in some ways, and that's known as segregation of duties. And that's really to limit broad access or overly broad access to prevent the risks of fraud. And they're also audited. So part of the audit process is to determine whether the roles that are given the security access is appropriate and that the department is maintaining segregation of duties. So some of the security controls that you may have may seem burdensome, but they're really designed to set up a strong security process to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. And now we have the employee role. And simply, that's really performing daily operation following the governance model, which are the internal controls, and to protect yourself, data, and systems. So one of the EOTS standards that are incorporated into your internal controls are the acceptable use of information assets. And most employees are going to sign a document that lists all the acceptable uses and what you're allowed to do in your department. So again, this is, you're supposed to act in a professional, ethical manner, follow your code of conduct and the relevant enterprise agency level policies, which also include data and system protection. So the EOTS policy contains a list of all the things you're not supposed to do with information technology. And you've seen this before, and if you haven't seen it, it's pretty self-explanatory. So you can't use Commonwealth resources for illegal acts or violating state or federal law, political, commercial purposes, threatening or harassment, accessing explicit or obscene materials, infringing on intellectual property rights, gaining access, unauthorized access to any computer or networks considered hacking, interference or disruption of network resources, including viruses and ransomware. And this is where, clicking on something that downloads a virus, that's one of the prohibited things that you're not supposed to do. Intercepting communications that are for somebody else, misrepresenting your agency or your role in the agency, chain letters, gambling, libel, or defamation. So pretty self-explanatory. So here are some examples of internal controls to prevent harmful email practices. And this comes to the confidentiality of the data that you have. So you're not supposed to use email accounts for commercial purposes unrelated to Commonwealth business. The next one is really important, is don't do work on your personal email account or your personal equipment. And that's really important because if you send confidential information to your personal account is hacked, it could release confidential information, which will be a breach. And it also exposes your network, both personal and your work network, to viruses and infections. Never send confidential information unless the recipient is authorized to receive it. So examples of this are your UAID, social security numbers, date of birth, and health information, or any kind of personal information. Don't use email to transmit any kind of confidential information if it's unprotected. And don't collect or transmit material in violation of any federal or local law. So simply thinking about this, if you touch it, you are touching data and systems. So whether you are on your laptop or your work PC or your phone or your tablet, you are touching data and systems. So don't be a cyber victim and don't let the bad guys in. This is an example of the types of data that you may touch working for the Commonwealth. You may have healthcare data or employee payroll, HR data, financial data, bank accounts or credit card information, direct deposit, other personal sensitive information, student records, or other department data. So if you are touching data, you have a responsibility to protect it. So there are privacy laws and other state and federal mandates that require you to protect confidential data. So if you touch it, or even if you have access to it, Part of your role is the responsibility to protect that data. So if you're using spreadsheets and it has confidential information, make sure you strip that information out before you share it or post it. Confidential data must be securely exchanged, so it has to be an authorized method, and make sure you verify what that is going to be. Never email confidential information unless it's password protected, and don't save confidential information in folders that don't have a password. So for example, if you are using Teams or SharePoint, make sure if you have confidential information, it's password protected, and don't give it out unless the other recipient has access and authorization for that confidential information. And again, if you're unsure, just ask your supervisors. So how do I protect myself and data and systems? It seems overwhelming, but it's really not as complicated as you may think. You're already using a lot of cyber controls, passwords, long and strong passwords, and not using repeated passwords, multi-factor authentication. So always set it up whenever you have the opportunity to, and virtual private network. So don't be afraid. We've rebranded the basic employee cybersecurity into 3 simple action steps. So cybersecurity is simple when you PVR. Pause, verify, and report. If you just remember these 3 steps, you are going to prevent the majority of breaches that happen by inadvertently clicking on something that is malicious. So pause before clicking on anything. Am I expecting this email or call? Do I recognize the sender? Is it from inside my organization or an official email? So be cautious if it's outside your organization. Is there a sense of urgency? And most important, does it have an attachment, logo, QR code, or an audio file? Because that's where the malicious code will be downloaded. Look for anything odd. If it's an urgent email that demands immediate response, any email or text that states that your access or your password has expired, don't rely on that. Make sure you contact your IT staff directly. Any email or text asking you to click on something in order to access a file or access a work group. Any email or text that warns you your account will be closed or there's an unauthorized login attempt. Also look for red flags like grammatical errors, misspellings, a generic greeting instead of your name, or it's sent outside normal working hours. Or look at the email and the phone and it may not match the department or the company that it seems to be from. This is an example of a phishing text. So what this text is trying to do is to get you to click on that link to get more information. This is considered scareware. So don't ever click on these links. Any kind of banking information that you have, it's always on your official account. Don't get to it through text. So log into your official account to verify activity. If you're worried about it or if there's any irregularity, change your password. Don't call the phone numbers that you see in the text because a lot of them are imposter numbers. When you're on the web, if you'll notice here, there are misspellings that are hard to see unless you really look at the URL. So notice misspellings because sometimes it's a simple letter in the URL. Just check it to make sure it's a legitimate link. The newest type of scam is called prompt bombing. And that's repeated pings or text or pop-ups that are asking you to accept or deny credentials or approve through your authenticator app. It's usually repeated text or pings that are off work hours, such as late at night when it's really annoying and you're tired. They may also appear to be legitimate. They'll say they're from your IT staff or Apple or Microsoft or your authenticator or a provider that you're used to dealing with. So be careful because a lot of times they're not legitimate. And they'll say, we're going to continue to prompt you until you click yes to stop. Don't get worn down. Don't select any options to make it stop because this will grant access to your phone or your tablet or your laptop. Exit out of the text or the authenticator without clicking on it and contact IT support. If this happens at home on your home cell, close out and contact your provider help desk for more information. So what not to click when you pause? Links, logos, QR codes, audio files. Criminals use colors and graphics because they want to encourage clicking. So even if the name is familiar, don't fall for it. Also, a lot of departments are using DocuSign and Adobe Sign for electronic signatures from the pandemic to make it more efficient. But you have to make sure you check the email to see who it's coming from because they look official. And then make sure you're verifying with the sender that these are legitimate, which leads us to the second step, which is verify. This is one of the most important steps. Verify, verify, verify. So don't click on anything until you verify that it's legitimate. That's known as zero trust. Don't rely solely on electronic paperwork, calls, or text to do your job. Follow your processing procedures and any checklists that you have. And for any major changes, make sure you verify personally with the requester. So for example, if you're doing any payroll or bank account change, make sure you're checking with them that it's legitimate. Contract documentation, any department business that is requested electronically, Office 365 requests to open a document or collaborate. So assume every email or text may be malicious until you verify it. So how do you personally verify it? You need to contact the sender or the requester through an alternate channel. So don't click reply and ask them for information. Find an official telephone number or an official email and contact them. If you got an email, then if it's from another department, go on a Teams call and see if they actually sent it to you. And if it's a DocuSign or Adobe Sign, you should be expecting it. It shouldn't come out of the blue. So make sure you're checking with them. For any transaction with an employee or a vendor, get on Zoom or FaceTime or Teams, not just a phone call, because these can be spoofed. And if you don't know the employee or vendor, ask them to show you official ID and you can take a screenshot. Some departments are setting up a validation pin or a keyword for vendor authorized signatories, and don't make any contract changes unless you verified that an authorized signatory has approved it. And the third step, report. Report any concerns immediately. If you can't verify a request or a requester, or you're just not sure, report it. Trust your gut. If it seems odd, report it. Who do you report it to? Your supervisor, whoever your assigned contact is for reporting. If your email is set up with the phishing button, you can click on the fish report button and that will automatically report any type of suspicious email for you. And then follow again your assigned internal controls, protocols that are set up for your particular unit. And don't be afraid to report, because this is going to not only protect you, but it's going to protect other people in your department and other departments from getting an infection that might be sent around. So here are some reminders for teleworking and hybrid tips. So make sure you're using office approved equipment and approved VPN and virus protections. Don't use your personal devices for work. Don't plug in your work devices to free US ports in public areas or free cables, because they're often infected. They have little chips that will go in and scrape your user ID and password, and they'll be able to get in your email and then send fraudulent emails using your official account. Don't provide any type of personal information in order to have access to free Wi-Fi. Again, long and strong passwords, more than 12 characters, 16 is best, and no repeats, especially social media accounts. Because again, social media accounts can have the passwords and user ID scraped, and they can use that to try to get into your work account. If they offer multi-factor, always set it up at home and at work. And make sure the operating systems in your browser and your malware protections are all up to date according to your department security requirements. So if they ask you to update something, update it when they request it. So at home, when you're using Wi-Fi, the best thing to do is to try to follow your internet provider instructions to change the name and password on your router and have it a long and strong password. And this prevents somebody from driving around and trying to skim that information and getting into your personal and your work information. And yes, it's going to require you to update your smart devices and your apps and games, but it really will protect you much more than just using the name and password that comes with your router, because a lot of those are out on the dark web already. And if your provider allows for multiple networks, then it's recommended that you set up one for work and a separate one for your family and smart devices and guests. So be careful about using smart devices on the same network as your work network, like Alexis or Google or the cameras, because these aren't necessarily secure and people can hack into those and then get into your network. So it's always best to have that on a separate network. And again, don't let friends or family or kids play games or surf or watch movies on your official devices. So use PVR at home also. It will keep your family data and equipment safe. Remind your kids, your elders and friends to pause before clicking. Always verify to make sure that an email, text, or a call request is valid and it's not an imposter. And then report to your service providers or use your spam reporting for reporting any type of phishing or spam emails that you get. And then delete suspicious emails and texts so you don't inadvertently click on them. So cybersecurity can be simple when you do these 3 simple steps. So just remember, pause, verify, and report. It will protect you both at home and at work. Always contact your supervisor or manager if you have any questions, and be cyber safe and PVR. Pause, verify, and report.